Carbohydrates are one of the four most important biomolecules, or we can say organic molecules that are absolutely essential for life. Carbohydrates are made up of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a 1:2:1 ratio. So you have two atoms of hydrogen for every one atom of carbon and oxygen. So this is the general formula for a carbohydrate. Carbohydrates provide us with energy or calories, and simple sugars in particular have very important roles to play in our regular diet. A lot of the foods that we consume on a daily basis are rich in carbohydrates. For example, rice, bread, fruits, vegetables, and most of the grains that we consume are a very good source of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be broadly divided into two categories. We have the simple carbohydrates and the complex carbohydrates. The simple carbohydrates are also called sugars. So when we use the term sugar, we are actually referring to the simple carbohydrates. So simple carbohydrates can either be monosaccharides or disaccharides. On the other hand, we have the complex carbohydrates or the complex sugars. Complex sugars can again be divided into oligosaccharides and polysaccharides. So let us discuss about simple and complex carbohydrates in this video. The term sugar actually refers to a saccharide. So whenever we hear the term sugar, we are actually referring it to a saccharide. So in this context, a monosaccharide is a carbohydrate that is made up of a single sugar unit. So a disaccharide is a carbohydrate that is made up of two sugar units. Similarly, we have oligosaccharides which are made up of 3 to 10 sugar units, and polysaccharides are polymers because they are made up of a large number of sugar molecules. So let's first discuss about monosaccharides. Monosaccharides are simple sugars that are important for rapid energy production in the human body. So monosaccharides can be broken down to release energy that the body can utilize. Besides this, they also form the core structural component of polysaccharides. Some key examples of monosaccharides are glucose, fructose, galactose, and ribose. So let's start with glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule. So 6C refers to the total number of carbons. Glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. So glucose is a simple sugar that is important in cellular respiration of organisms because glucose can be broken down to release energy, which is nothing but ATP or adenosine triphosphate. So all the living cells require glucose because glucose contains energy that can be broken down in a process called glycolysis to release energy. Glyco refers to sugar and lysis means breaking down. So breaking down of sugar to release energy. Adenosine triphosphate is the energy that is released, and this can be utilized for a range of metabolic activities in the body. The next example is fructose. Fructose is also a monosaccharide. It is made up of 6 carbons. So fructose is naturally found in fruits, vegetables, and honey. Then we have galactose, which is again a 6-carbon sugar, a monosaccharide. Now galactose is naturally found in milk and dairy products. So these are some of the important monosaccharides that contain 6 carbons. So the common thing among all these three are they have the same molecular formula, that is C6H12O6. Glucose, fructose and galactose share the same molecular formula, but their structural arrangement of atoms are different. So they are called as isomers. They are isomers of one another. Apart from these three, we also have two more important monosaccharides, that are ribose and deoxyribose. Now these are simple sugars that are made up of 5 carbons. So ribose is a component of RNA, while deoxyribose is a component of DNA. So these are 5 carbon sugars. The simplest sugar is actually a 3 carbon molecule which is called glyceraldehyde. So we have seen examples containing 3 carbons, 5 carbons and 6 carbons. We also have molecules or sugars that are made up of 4 carbons like erythrose. So all these are classified under monosaccharides. The structures of the 3 most common monosaccharides are given here. So glucose and galactose are in the shape of a hexagon, while fructose usually exists in the shape of a pentagon. So this is the basic ring-shaped structure of glucose. You have carbons at these positions, and this is how glucose and galactose would normally exist. Fructose and 5 carbon sugars like ribose and deoxyribose, which is usually found in nucleic acids, exist in the form of a pentagon. So this is how fructose would look. So it contains 4 carbons and an oxygen within the ring structure. So carbon is unique in that carbon can form straight chain compounds, and it can also form ring-shaped structures like these. So this unique property of carbon is actually termed catenation in chemistry. In addition to these two structures, carbon can also form branched chain compounds. So this is a unique property of carbon. So it can form straight chain structures, ring-shaped structures, as well as branched chain structures. Fructose is the sweetest carbohydrate that is found naturally in nature. So plants usually make nectar that is very rich in fructose, and it is extremely sweet. So plants synthesize nectar which contains a very high concentration of the sugar fructose, and this will help to attract the insects. So the insects come and try to feed on the nectar because it is a very good source of sugar. This will also help in the transfer of pollen grains from one plant to the other. So indirectly it is helping the plant to also reproduce, because by producing fructose they are attracting a lot of insects, and insects are one of the primary carriers of the male gametes or pollen grains from one plant to the other. Apart from fructose, the nectar also contains some amounts of glucose and sucrose. So nectar produces a bunch of sugars, of which fructose is very important because it is helping to attract the insects. Next, let's discuss about disaccharides. So when two sugar molecules combine, we get a disaccharide. So a disaccharide is made up of two sugar units that are joined together. So some important examples of disaccharides include, first one is sucrose, then we have lactose and maltose. We have many more examples, but these are the three most important disaccharides. So sucrose is nothing but table sugar. So this is the sugar that we are regularly consuming in our lives. Sucrose is a table sugar that is made up of glucose, and fructose. So these are the two sugar units that make up sucrose. Then we have lactose. So lactose is a disaccharide that is made up of galactose and glucose. So lactose is predominantly found in milk products. However, some people are actually lactose intolerant, meaning their body cannot break down lactose into galactose and glucose. So these people are called lactose intolerant. Finally, we have maltose. So maltose is made up of two molecules of glucose. Both the sugar units here are glucose, and maltose is commonly found in grains and sweet potatoes. Sucrase, lactase, and maltase are the three important enzymes that help in the digestion of disaccharides. So sucrose is the table sugar that we consume, lactose is the important sugar found in milk, and maltose is actually obtained from the breakdown of starch. So a breakdown product of starch is maltose, and maltose can be further broken down to release glucose. So all these three enzymes, sucrase, maltase, and lactase, are found in the brush border cells of our small intestine. The brush border cells in small intestine contain a very high concentration of these enzymes, and these enzymes can help break down the disaccharides to release the individual monosaccharides. The monosaccharides, especially glucose released through this process, is absorbed into the bloodstream and can then be transported throughout the body. So glucose is a very important sugar for all the body cells because glucose can be metabolized to release energy that is stored in the form of ATP. All these three reactions are also known as hydrolysis reactions because the breakdown of the disaccharide is taking place in the presence of water. So water plays an important role, or water is required for the breakdown of these disaccharides. So they are also known as hydrolysis reactions. Let's move to complex carbohydrates, and the first one is oligosaccharides. So oligosaccharides contain anywhere between 3 to 10 units of sugar. And the best example for a oligosaccharide is raffinose. So raffinose can be considered as a trisaccharide because it is made up of 3 sugar units. So it is commonly referred to as a trisaccharide. It is made up of galactose, fructose, and glucose. So these are the 3 sugar units that make up raffinose. So raffinose is abundantly found in beans, broccoli, cabbage, and some of the fruits, although fruits contain it in very small quantities. Another important example for oligosaccharides are fructooligosaccharides, or FOS in short. So they are made up of a few units of the sugar fructose. So fructose is the only sugar which is present in FOS. So this is commonly used in nutrition bars. So they contain natural soluble fiber, and it can also act as a sweetener. So it is commonly used in nutrition and energy bars. They also come under oligosaccharides. So the last class is polysaccharides. So this is the form that most of the carbohydrates actually exist in. They are composed of a large number of sugar molecules or monosaccharides that are joined together by glycosidic bonds. So this is a type of a covalent bond that helps to unite the sugar molecules together. The most important polysaccharides are starch, glycogen, and cellulose. So these are the three most abundant and important polysaccharides. The unique feature about all these three molecules is they are exclusively made up of glucose. So when starch is broken down, we get glucose, glycogen, cellulose. Whenever these polysaccharides are broken down, we only get the monosaccharide glucose. So they are also called as homopolysaccharides. Homopolysaccharides because they are just made up of one kind of sugar unit. Starch is the most important carbohydrate for humans and accounts for nearly 50% of our daily carbohydrate intake. The rice that we eat on a regular basis contains high amounts of starch. Besides rice, starch is also abundant in seeds and tubers of plants, where it helps to serve as the storage form of glucose or the storage form of carbohydrates. Now, starch can be broken down by the enzyme amylase. So amylase is a very important enzyme because it can help to break down starch into maltose, which we studied is a disaccharide, and maltose can be broken down into glucose by the action of the enzyme maltase. So starch is a very important storage form of energy for most of the plants. Starch actually exists as a mixture of two important polymers. One is amylose, the other one is amylopectin. Okay, so starch is basically a mixture of amylose and amylopectin. In both the cases, if you notice, the sugar unit is basically glucose. So glucose is the sugar that is required in the formation of amylose and amylopectin. Natural starch contains around 10 to 30% of amylose and around 70 to 90% of amylopectin. So amylose is a linear chain polymer, whereas amylopectin is heavily branched. The individual glucose units are held together by covalent bonds called glycosidic bonds. So these are the bonds that hold the sugar units together. And remember, both the forms of starch are exclusively made up of the sugar glucose. Next up we have glycogen. So glycogen is also a complex sugar or a polysaccharide. So glycogen serves as the glucose reservoir in animals. So starch is its equivalent in plants, but in animals it is glycogen. So glycogen is usually stored in the liver and the muscle cells. So whenever the body requires glucose, glycogen can be broken down to release glucose so that the body cells can utilize it. So breakdown of glycogen requires the presence of an important hormone, glucagon, which is secreted by the pancreas. So whenever the body is running short of glucose, we have the glucose reserves in the form of glycogen that can be broken down to immediately release glucose, and glucose can be broken down through aerobic cellular respiration to produce ATP that the body can utilize. So the last important complex sugar is cellulose. So unlike starch and glycogen, which mostly serve as a storage form of sugars, cellulose is important because it helps to give structural integrity to the cell walls. So it is acting as the structural component of the cell walls in plants. Apart from plant cell walls, the cotton fibrils also contain about 90% cellulose, and the wood also comprises about 50% cellulose. So apart from plant cell walls, these are the other two important sources of cellulose. Now, all the cellulose is also made up of glucose. The humans cannot utilize cellulose as an energy source because the enzyme which is required to break down cellulose, which is cellulase, is not present in human beings. So cellulose cannot be used as a source of energy because human beings lack the enzyme required to break it down. However, we have some microbes that are usually residing in the gut of ruminants such as the cow and sheep, and they can produce cellulase, and so these animals are able to utilize cellulose as a source of energy. Another important polysaccharide is chitin. So this is seen in fungi. So cellulose is observed in the cell walls of plants, while chitin is a polysaccharide that is seen in the cell walls of fungi. This is a very brief introduction to the world of carbohydrates, and if you have liked this video, please share it with your friends.